So imagine from a speed of 6,000 kilometers per hour at one time, the aim is to deboost and hover before a gentle touchdown. That's the aim, a soft landing on the south pole of the moon. It's been attempted before, never successfully done. The area has been mapped. It's on the grid of the scientists. Lessons have been learned from Chandrayaan 2, and multiple redundancies have been built into the system to ensure India becomes the first country in the world to achieve this soft landing on the south pole of the moon. But what does this mean and what will it entail? I'm Gaurav Sawant. Over the course of the next half hour, we get you the final countdown. But first, as always, the headlines. Less than 20 hours to go now for Chandrayaan 3's moon touchdown. Isro ready with plan B in case conditions are unfavorable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to watch the landing live virtually in South Africa. Delhi's alleged rapist Babu and wife's attempt to evade arrest foiled. CCTV images show the bureaucrat at a church days after the FIR was filed against him. Delhi Women's Panel Chief seeks a meeting with the Union Home Minister Amit Shah. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in South Africa for the BRICS summit at Johannesburg. Big suspense over a bilateral with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Shocking Bihar VVIP culture on display. An ambulance blocked for Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar's convoy despite the patient's family crying. A Bihar police officer also seen holding an umbrella for RJD Supremo Lalu Prasad Yadav. "18 charred bodies found. Wildfire continues to spread across Greece. The bodies were recovered from an area in the northeast of Greece by firefighters struggling hard to control the blaze." With bated breath, a billion-strong nation is waiting for the final touchdown of Chandrayaan 3. The countdown has begun for Vikram lander to softly touch down and land on the south pole of the moon. And once moon dust settles, the Pragyan rover will roll out. And with that, India's national emblem, the Ashok symbol, the Ashok Chin, and of course, the symbol of the Indian Space Research Organization will forever be imprinted on moon. Isro is confident. So far, all systems are working. There are multiple redundancies that have been built in. Every situation has been war-gamed. And of course, also the prayers of a billion-strong nation. India Today's Akshita Nandagopal brings you our top story.
India's moon mission is hours away from a historic climax. Chandrayaan's Vikram lander is approaching the moon rendezvous. Saying hello to Chandrama, snapping breathtaking images from close vicinity, showing moon in all its glory. With details of the unexplored far side, complete with billion-year-old craters. Indian Space Agency asserted that the mission is fully on track. The system is undergoing regular checks to ensure a smooth touchdown.
It is almost similar to what we designed or developed for Chandrayaan 2, except for instead of orbiter now, because orbiter is anyway working fine, and it is still useful and it is giving a lot of important data which will be utilized for Chandrayaan 3 landing also. So we decided that orbiter will be replaced by a propulsion module. Which duty is to take it to the orbit of moon surface.
Isro is not taking any chances, especially after crash of the Russian moon mission. Keeping another landing site ready for Sunday touchdown if parameters aren't ideal on Wednesday. Former ISRO chief K. Sivan broke down the final maneuvers moments before the planned touchdown.
First of all, Lunar mission failure and this one, they are not related. Lunar actually that is have its own system, its own the sensor, thrusters, and it may have its own characteristics. But we have our own system, our own thruster, our own sensors, which it has been functioning very nicely and without any problem. And till now we are achieved what we want in a perfect way. And I am sure that this will repeat on 23rd also. So we will get a good landing, and we are not getting disturbed by the Luna 25 failure. They are not related. They are not a similar system. They are different system.
Okay.
So we are confident that we will be able to achieve without any problem.
A billion cheers, prayers and wishes are meanwhile pouring in as India roots for Chandrayaan 3.
एक बहुत बड़ा इतिहास भारत के सभी विशेषज्ञों ने, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों ने रचा है और प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में भारत नई ऊंचाइयां तो छू ही रहा था। भारत का तिरंगा केवल देश के अंदर नहीं लेकिन विश्व पटल पर अब हमारी यही कोशिश है कि वो तिरंगा चांद पे भी गाड़ के रखा जाए।
Special pujas are being held in temples and namaz is being offered in mosques, all for Chandrayaan's success. The lander is expected to touch down on Moon's south polar region at 6:04 p.m. on Wednesday. We wish India a grand success in conquering the moon. With Akshita Nandagopal in Bengaluru and Milan Sharma in Ahmedabad, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me on India First is Raj Chingappa, Group Editorial Director, Publishing of the India Today Group. Raj, you were there at ISRO in 2019. Now, from Chandrayaan 2 mission, there are important lessons learned, multiple redundancies that have been built into the system. And give us a detail of the scenarios that have been wargamed. Is ISRO absolutely confident India is set to create history?
Absolutely, Gaurav. I was speaking to Dr. Somnath, the chairman of ISRO, and he was explaining what were the lessons they learned from the failure of Chandrayaan 2, and what they have done is built on that. I mean, there were 3 or 4 major issues that happened in Chandrayaan 2, which is the propulsion system. It moved too fast when it was supposed to slow down at a particular point. That created its anomaly in terms of the guidance system. That spun the Chandrayaan. I was there while watching the TV. From the mission control, you saw Chandrayaan spin, and then we lost contact. What it did was the control system failed and it crashed. So what they have done this time is built in each of these critical systems. When it's propulsion, the speed, mind you, Gaurav, and you cover armed forces, is that it's traveling at 6,000 kilometers per hour. That's 5 times the speed of sound. Faster than many of our Sukhois and everything else that's traveling. A civilian jet goes at about 1,000 kilometers per hour max. So you're saying 6 times the speed, you have to cut it and bring it down to 0 so that when it lands, it touches down softly, almost like you're walking on the moon's surface. That's what it needs to do with the lander. So one is in terms of the propulsion and the velocity that is need to be cut down. You will need these thrusters that begin to in some sense, retard the speed. There they have done a lot of the, they've made sure that they've got excess fuel, plus they've ensured that if one fails, the other could pick it up and do the balance. The same thing if you take a look at the guidance system. Earlier there was a software error, which meant that the parameters that they had calculated in the algorithm, the moment this went too fast, this turned out, they have now broadened that considerably. And the third aspect of it is, in the guidance, the final control and landing, what they have done is that last time they could only land in a patch of, say, like a football field. That was the size that was there. So it was very pinpointed accuracy that they had to do. This time it's much larger. It's like 4 times larger the size, which means that it gives them the leeway. And very cleverly, Gaurav, let me tell you, and that's what gives me the confidence, is that because they had Chandrayaan-2 at the orbiter working over there, they've mapped that entire terrain. So they know precisely where they want to land, one. And secondly, because they don't need another orbiter, they've put in more fuel into this. There's almost, the weight of this is almost 200, kgs that they were talking about, which is heavier, which means that they gives them more flexibility. If there's an error, fuel is critical. It's just like if you're traveling from one point to the other, if your car does not have the fuel, it runs out. This was the problem they had when they did with Chandrayaan-2. So this time they made sure they have enough fuel, enough redundancy, and that's why I think tomorrow we're going to celebrate.
And then when Vikram lander comes into land, it'll actually hover like a helicopter for some time if need be. But sir, why is this so important, not just for India, but for entire humankind? From that soft landing, the next 14 days, 14 Earth days and 1 lunar day, why are they so crucial?
Good question. I mean, firstly, let's look at it from the Indian point of view. We are great at building satellites. We have demonstrated that right through for the last 50, 60 years, right? We have reached a competence that's cutting edge. We are great at building launchers. We now have the heaviest launcher, which actually pushed, the initial phase of Chandrayaan into the beyond the Earth's orbit and on the way to the moon. So we have built competencies in launch vehicles as well as satellites. But when it comes to space exploration, we have done Chandrayaan-1, where we successfully orbited the moon, had an impactor. We have done Mangalyaan, a Mars mission, as well as now we're looking at the sun. Very, very important for scientists to demonstrate. What is the purpose of this mission? There's 3 purposes. One is to ensure that the lander lands on the surface. It didn't do that last time. 2, that the rover moves, comes out from its from the lander and moves. And 3, of course, is the scientific experiments. Each of these 3 have not been done. That's cutting-edge science for Indian space scientists and for India. Now, if you take a look at the importance that is there, we have seen a remarkable return to the moon. Artemis project, which was started in 2017 by NASA, is now planning to put man back or humans back on the moon by 2025. That's 2 years from now, after a gap of 1972. So you can imagine 4 or 5 decades have gone and they want it back. Why? Because the moon can be a major staging ground for space exploration. You get experience. Also, let's look at why we're landing at the South Pole, for instance. We feel there's a lot of water ice and molecules. Yes. And what will happen is that we can then colonize the moon in some senses and use it as a gateway to explore space.
Raj, for joining me here on India First, many thanks. Moon could well be the staging camp as far as Earth is concerned for Mission Mars, the tactical headquarters for any future operations into space. Of course, attempts have been made to land on the South Pole of the moon even earlier, and not just by India. In fact, Russia's Lunar 25 mission failed just over the weekend. It's a huge blow to Russia's moon program, or Mission Moon. But the way Vikram lander has been built in with multiple cameras, lasers, radars, imagers, scanning the moon's surface when it comes in to land, it will virtually hover like a helicopter, finding just the right place to land and ensure that there are no deep craters or boulders, and then land so that the Pragyan rover can then roll out, carrying out the tests for the next 14 days. Very crucial for the study of the evolution of our system.
3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
The moon is just 25 kilometers below India's Chandrayaan-3. As a new chapter begins in India's moon tryst, 1 billion people are praying for its successful landing. The Vikram lander is aiming to land on the lunar South Pole, which is a difficult feat. So what makes the soft landing near the lunar South Pole incredibly difficult? The South Pole of the moon's rugged terrain lies in the shade of perpetual darkness and plummeting temperatures. This is where researchers had previously discovered the presence of frozen water. Chandrayaan 3's successful landing will expand knowledge of frozen water on the moon, potentially one of the moon's most valuable resources. Scientists are interested in pockets of ancient water ice because they could provide a record of lunar volcanoes, materials that comets and asteroids delivered to Earth, and the origins of oceans. If water ice exists in sufficient quantities, it could be a source of drinking water for moon exploration and could help cool equipments. It could also be broken down to produce hydrogen for fuel and oxygen to breathe, supporting missions to Mars or lunar mining. Attempted landings on the moon have failed before. Russia's Lunar 25 craft had been scheduled to land on the South Pole this week, but spun out of control on approach and crashed on Sunday. The South Pole, far from the equatorial region targeted by previous missions, including the crewed Apollo landings, is full of craters and deep trenches. Chandrayaan 3 is proposed to land in the plateau between two craters, Manzinus and Boguslawski, and a third, Simpelius. Additionally, an alternate landing site has also been proposed. At the mountainous South Pole, the terrain is difficult and dangerous with major craters, minimal sunlight and temperatures below -300°F. If all goes according to plan, Chandrayaan 3 is poised to achieve a historic milestone as the world's first lunar mission to execute a soft landing near the moon's south pole. Bureau Report, India Today.
And as we move forward, let's take a look at India's space journey. From an imported rocket in 1963 to the made in India Chandrayaan 3, incidentally a cost less than that Hollywood film Interstellar. India's space mission has actually come a long way. Of course, anticipation builds around Chandrayaan's moonshot. Today, even the sky is not the limit for India.
वास्तव में अंतरिक्ष में हैं, तो क्या वैसी ही हालत है या कुछ अलग लग रहा है?
India's pride soars high.
ऊपर से भारत कैसा दिखता है आपको?
मैं बगैर किसी झिझक के कह सकता हूँ कि सारे जहां से अच्छा.
Astronaut Rakesh Sharma becomes the first Indian to explore the celestial realm in a joint space mission with what was then Soviet Union. But the country achieved its first astronomical feat much before in 1963. Nike Apache, a two-stage sounding rocket imported from the United States, blasted off from a fishing village near Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. Over the last 6 decades, India's space program has evolved enormously. From launch vehicles for satellites, INSATs for telecom, broadcasting, meteorology, remote sensing for satellite imagery, to research and development in space. From Aryabhat, a satellite designed and fabricated indigenously and launched from a Soviet rocket in 1975, to now on course to reach the moon and become the first country to explore its south pole.
Here we have a majestic liftoff of LBM-3M4 rocket carrying India's prestigious Chandrayaan 3 spacecraft.
Because that's a place where we can get sufficiently enough solar heat, light for power generation. If you go further, there is a possibility that you will not get the full daytime utility.
15 years ago, India's first moon mission performed a detailed search of evidence of water and chemical composition of certain lunar rocks. The sky is the limit for the country's space ambitions. India's first space-based mission to study the sun. Aditya L1 nearing its launch date by the end of August or early September.
Currently, payloads are getting integrated with the satellite, and it will go through a series of testing, including thermovag, vibration, so many things. And after that, we'll have the launch. It goes in a PSLV, so that will send a commercial launch. So after that, we are already starting another building a next PSLV, and we are targeting by August end that Aditya can go.
ISRO working on the Gaganyaan mission, India's first manned space flight program. Blazing its way through the Earth's final frontier, India establishes itself as a space power and a master of space engineering. Bureau Report, India Today.
And not just India, not just a billion-strong people, it's actually the world that's watching India. My colleague Akshita Nandagopal spoke exclusively to a former NASA astronaut and the commander of the International Space Station, Chris Hadfield, on India's Chandrayaan 3 mission and what the world is looking at. Let's listen in to some excerpts.
And it's my absolute pleasure to be joined here on India Today by Chris Hadfield, former commander of the International Space Station and author of the Apollo murders. Just to give you a brief sense of all that Chris has achieved, he's flown in 3 missions, built 2 space stations, performed 2 spacewalks, and was the first Canadian to have walked in space. So you'd understand why I'm particularly excited about his new book, The Defector, that is in fact releasing on October 10th. That's coming out. Chris, good morning. Congratulations on your new book, and thank you very much for joining us here on India Today. I've been seeing, from your social media interactions that you've been tracking the Chandrayaan 3 moon mission very, very closely. Just so for our viewers to understand from an expert perspective, from your perspective, how hard really is a soft landing on the moon?
Well, thank you and good evening. I heard someone say 1 billion cheers for Vikram, and add my voice as one of those billion cheers. It's immensely exciting, but as you say, it's extremely hard. It's 400,000 kilometers away, and we're landing way down to the south, 70 degrees south. It's as if you were landing on the edge of Antarctica, and you're trying to do it where the final last few meters or few feet of touchdown, you're just counting on the automatic systems. And so there can always be, a boulder in the way or an uneven spot on the ground, even though they've chosen a plateau. And I know that the Russians had no success earlier this week. Remember, they've launched 27 missions to the moon, and they only landed 7 times, and the last one was a failure. So it's still exquisitely difficult. But with the tremendous experience gained in Chandrayaan 1, which helped discover water on the moon, in Chandrayaan 2, which has been mapping the moon ever since, and now with sort of the granddaughter of all of those, of Chandrayaan 3, I'm really optimistic and excited about the landing that's going to be happening just slightly under 24 hours from now.
I loved how you referred to Chandrayaan 3 as the granddaughter of these missions. It's so aptly put. I'm going to borrow that phrase also in the next 24 hours. You referred to Lunar 25, and the reason I talk about it right now, Chris, is look, Russia has attempted this, as you said, 27 times. They've got it right 7 times. Now, in the last 50 years or so, we've seen several such soft landings occur. It's 2023, and yet we haven't really been able to master it. Why is that? What makes it so unpredictable or so hard so many years on?
Well, part of it is the nature of the moon itself. If you were going around the moon, the amount of gravity that you feel in different parts of the orbit changes. The moon is a lot more lumpy than the Earth is. It's got big, dense sections. And so that makes orbital prediction more difficult. It's hard to know exactly where you are. There's no GPS. So where exactly around the moon are you? How do you even figure that out? And even though we've taken lots of images from the orbiting vehicles of the plateau that Chandrayaan 3 and Vikram are going to land on, you still don't know the fine details. Imagine if you were trying to land a helicopter somewhere in India and you looked and looked and looked, but then just when you got close to the surface, you had to sort of close your eyes and then just descend the last 50 meters with your eyes closed. It's sort of that level of difficulty. And that's why the engineers at Isro have been working so hard since Chandrayaan 2 to improve all of the systems, to make the landing gear wider and more robust, to try and give extra layers of backup. And it is possible to land on the moon. 3 other nations have done it. And I think India is really poised right now to be the 4th nation in history to land on the moon. The scientific impact of that and the inspirational impact of that for young Indians right across the country. But it all comes down to that last descent and touchdown coming up within a day now.
Well, 3 nations have done it, but India will be the first to do it on the South Pole of the moon. And we'll be tracking that story very, very closely. That is all I have for you on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching. Up next, Abha Bakaya with Business Today. Stay with us.
As Chandrayaan 3 circles the moon, India's billion breaths are held. Our spacecraft is in final descent, and every Indian heart beats for it as India's historic moon landing nears for our scientists and their mooncraft. Your love, your prayers, your wishes matter. Come on, India, cheer for Chandrayaan.
Hello and welcome. You're with us here in Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the day's top stories. India's giant leap towards Atmanirbharta in car safety ratings. Nitin Gadkari inaugurates Bharat NCAP program. Enthusiastic response by the industry. 30 requests for testing already received. Government rushes to placate angry onion traders in Maharashtra. Agencies to buy 5 lakh tons at record high prices will also sell onions across India at 25 rupees a kilo to bring down eye-watering prices. Finance Ministry report says inflation to remain high in the coming months, blames it on global uncertainties and domestic disruptions, new crop arrivals and imports to ease price pressures. The new direct tax code will have no income tax exemptions, announces the chairman of the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, says exemptions only increase costs, calls for higher taxes to develop infrastructure. Sensex and Nifty end flat, even as small and mid-cap stocks surge in trade today. PSU metal and IT shares shine. Mixed global cues keep investors guessing. Jio Financial shares hit lower circuit for second consecutive day since its listing, loses $2 billion in valuation in 2 days. Exchanges postpone its exclusion from indices for 3 days. India has taken a giant leap towards Atmanirbharta in car safety ratings. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways today launched the new Bharat Car Assessment Program, or the Bharat NCAP, to evaluate safety standards of passenger vehicles. According to the minister, requests to test and certify more than 30 models from several automakers have already been received.
Cars being deliberately smashed against walls. Wired mannequins in them sending real-time data on damages and injuries. Getting a 5-star rating in these tests can break or make a car model. Companies like Tata, Mahindra, Maruti had sent to their models overseas for these tests, incurring huge expenses. From the 1st October, these tests will be conducted right here in India. Under the Bharat NCAP program, passenger vehicles that can accommodate up to 8 passengers and weigh up to 3.5 ton will be tested. These vehicles will be tested through various methods that are in sync with global NCAP and Euro NCAP crash testing protocols, and will be assigned a safety rating ranging between 0 and 5 stars. The comprehensive criteria for the star ratings include facets such as pedestrian-friendly design, structural robustness, provision of active and passive safety technologies, as well as safety provisions for both adult and child occupants.
It is really, I cannot explain it into the word. And this is the time that we have the highest priority for this, how we can save the life of the people. And road safety is the most important thing for that. But it is not only that, whole industry is responsible. Somewhere road engineering is a big problem. Our total process of making a detailed project report is it's totally wrong methodology, and we select the agency, they create a lot of problems, there are a lot of complications, and because of that also we are facing the problem.
The government has already received requests to test and certify more than 30 models from several automakers under the assessment program. The program is voluntary and tests the base variant of a given model.
Already more than 30 applications have been received, because this whole exercise was done in consultation with the industry, and therefore industry was very positive about it. And already on today's day of launch, 30 applications for testing have been received.
According to the Road Transport Ministry, the program's objective is to furnish car consumers with a tool for making comparative evaluations of the crash safety attributes of motor vehicles available in the market. There are, however, concerns that the crash test could lead to prices hikes by manufacturers.
As and when the new additional features are added, it comes at a cost. So definitely that will increase the cost. But as I said, for us, we already have the safety pack in place. So frankly, for us it won't. But players who do not have these features and they have to add it afresh, definitely they will increase the prices.
This will encourage manufacturers to do more towards safety beyond what is required by regulation, and go for higher stars. So that's a positive step. And since the government is involved, it gives some authenticity and objectivity. That's a positive.
Importantly, the Bharat NCAP test will provide a big boost to exports from India. The tough NCAP rules mean that Indian results will be accepted across more countries. The government also expects foreign car manufacturers to start testing their cars in India. With Chetan Bhutani, Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
Apple is looking at expanding its manufacturing operations in India. Senior government sources have told Business Today TV that top representatives from Apple India recently held a detailed meeting with officials from the Finance Ministry to discuss their plans for expanding iPhone manufacturing. According to sources, discussions centered around the future of smartphone manufacturing within India and how India's policies could be aligned to support this initiative. Karishma Sudani has more on this for us. Karishma?
Well, we do have our sources in the Ministry of Finance confirming us that Apple India team had a detailed discussion with officials of the Finance Ministry in India. In fact, we've been told that discussions were held on how India emerges as to be one of the key investment countries when it comes to the smartphone industry. In fact, the tech giant also shared with India that they do see value creation in the coming years in the country, and they do want India to be one of the emerging countries besides Vietnam and Cambodia as the spot of investment and manufacturing of iPhones. This also kind of drifts away China from the whole plan of leading and holding a monopoly in the smartphone manufacturing market. We're also told that government is in a positive cooperation with the whole concept of smartphone manufacturing in India, and if required may consider certain tax incentives to companies.
Thanks, Karishma. In one of the surest signs of the direction that the government is heading in, Bibek Debroy has called for removal of tax exemptions. Debroy, the chairperson of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, today called for tax reforms and suggested that the provision of exemptions and direct taxes should be eliminated. Speaking at an event in Kolkata, he said exemptions lead to higher costs of compliance for the taxpayer. He also highlighted that if Indians aspire for growth and want world-class infrastructure, they should be ready to pay higher taxes. The government has been moving towards slowly weeding out tax exemptions, with the new income tax regime offering exemption-less higher tax slabs.
The eventual direct tax code, in my view, will involve a complete elimination of all exemptions. Any exemption only makes life more complicated. Any exemption only increases compliance costs. Any exemption only leads to litigation. Any exemption only enriches chartered accountants and lawyers. So whether we like it or not, either we must be prepared to pay more as taxes, or our expectations cannot be that we will get airports like in the West, or railway stations like in China, or whatever.
Markets were flat today, unchanged from their previous close. Bulls did attempt to take charge, but fag end selling in heavyweights erased the day's gains. All eyes on global cues to direct the markets in the near term. The Sensex and Nifty both pretty much unchanged for the session. Top gainers today, Adani Enterprise, HDFC Life, ITC, NTPC and Hero MotoCorp. We'll bring those up for you in just a second. So those are some of the names that stood out. While on the losers end, we had Jio Financial Services, once again BPCL, Cipla, Eicher Motors and Bajaj Finserv. New age technology stocks were in demand today, with several brokerage reports raising estimates for their stock prices. Some of the stocks like Nykaa, Paytm and Zomato were among big gainers today, with the Nifty Digital Index ending up 0.67%, second to only the PSU indices. My colleague Sakshi Batra spoke to market analyst Kranti Patini to gauge the market mood for some of these counters.
For any investor looking at the new age tech basket, what would you really recommend? How should one really approach? Is this the right time, first of all, to jump into some of them, start building up their positions, nibbling into some of them, because now we are seeing profitability come in and fundamentals improving for some of them. Is this the right time?
Absolutely, Sakshi. I believe this is the right time for the new age companies. Investors want to take their positions because, as you rightly mentioned, one thing is fundamentals are improving, profitability is coming back, and also valuations are not stretched as it were they were at the time of listing. So it is a very good price range for any investor who want to take their position, but they can take in a staggered manner. There is no hurry to buy and jump at this point of time. Probably they can buy at dips in their portfolio, but absolutely it's the right time to start taking the position in these new age companies.
Okay, so if I were to ask you, Mr. Patini, that out of all of these names that we've discussed, Paytm, Policy Bazaar, Zomato, Car Trade Technologies, and also Delivery and CE Info Systems, maybe Nykaa also. If I have to discuss with you, which are the best placed stocks to really keep their focus on? Investors, where should they keep their focus on now?
The first priority goes to Sakshi, definitely to 197. The Paytm is the favorite pick at this point of time. The remaining also at an appropriate point of time, one need to take the decision as per the price movements and the earning visibility improves for these stocks.
Okay, and you know, some of them, like we already have seen a 50% surge coming in. Where do you see fair value still, you know, on the stock coming in, and where do you believe that, you know, the stocks are now poised to perhaps reach their issue prices once again?
That's a very interesting question, Sakshi. Okay, one thing is the stock have completely taken a U-turn and they formed a base, and it's a process, and they're right now inching towards in a higher trend. One good thing that happened in these stocks is they are in the trend for most of these companies are in an uptrend. The trend has emerged in a positive territory. So always investors need to keep their trend as their friend.
We take a break. When we come back, we'll bring you an expert who will explain the new tax rules on life insurance policies and what they mean.
Where did our moon come from? Well, actually, there have been several theories over many decades. Earlier versions of lunar formation theories included capture, where the moon would have been a strayed planetoid. Another version was fission, where the Earth was spinning so fast that it would have warped out of the Earth and then formed its own body. This led to our current theory, the giant impactor theory. So this collision was during the late stages of planetary formation throughout our entire solar system, when planets were still very new and very much forming. So this happened when Earth was just an embryo, a baby planet. And this was actually in a crash course collision with Theia, which is a Mars-sized planetoid. And this collision ripped apart early Earth's crust. And that crust then coalesced, it snowballed into a whole separate entity, which we now call the moon. So where did our moon come from? Well, currently our understanding is that the Earth had collided with a Mars-sized object named Theia. But once we send future astronauts to the lunar surface again, who knows? We may actually have a whole new theory in the coming decades.
Welcome back. The central government has stepped up efforts to soothe the rising tempers of onion traders in Maharashtra. Central Purchasing Agency have been ordered to procure 5 lakh ton onions at very attractive prices. What's more, the government has hinted that it may waive the 40% export duty on shipments which have already reached ports.
Anger spilling over to the streets of Nashik. Traders from Lassalgaon and Ahmednagar, onion mandis staged demonstrations and chakka jams, protesting the government's decision to hit onion exports with a 40% duty. Mandis, usually overflowing with onions, were deserted this morning. with traders and commission agents of Nashik, which boosts the largest wholesale onion market in Asia, boycotting trade from Monday.
व्यापारी लोकल मार्केट में जो प्याज है ये इसके भाव गिर जाएंगे और शेतकरी का बड़ा नुकसान हो जाएगा। पहले ही शेतकरी ने जब सीजन में कांदा शुरुआत में 300 रुपए 400 रुपए क्विंटल बेचना पड़ा, आज बड़ी मुश्किल से भाव थोड़े सुधर रहे थे, लेकिन केंद्र सरकार ने ये निर्यात मूल्य बढ़ाकर किसानों का बहुत बड़ा नुकसान किया है।
The government has reacted quickly to the flare-up, announcing that central procurement agencies like NCCF and NAFED will buy 2 lakh tons of onions over and above the 3 lakh tons bought in the past couple of days from the Nashik area. The procurement will be done at record prices of 2,410 rupees per 100 kilos. The agencies will also sell onions across the country at subsidized rates of 25 rupees a kilo.
NCCF और NAFED देश के अलग अलग इलाकों में 25 रुपए पर सब्सिडाइज रेट पर केंद्र सरकार वो सब्सिडी उपलब्ध कराएगी। सब्सिडाइज रेट पर प्याज उपभोक्ताओं के लिए, सामान्य आदमियों के लिए, सामान्य लोगों के लिए उपलब्ध कराएगी।
What's more, in an effort to cool tempers, the government seems willing to waive the newly imposed 40% export duty on onions, which have already reached ports.
कुछ सामान पोर्ट के अंदर शिपमेंट के लिए, एक्सपोर्ट के लिए गया है, उसकी जानकारी JNPT वगैरह से हम ले रहे हैं। अगर वो पोर्ट के अंदर जाके शिपिंग बिल फाइल हो गया है 40% ड्यूटी लगने के पहले, तो उस पर उचित निर्णय DGFT लेंगे।
The centre seems to have staved off a crisis, both economic and political for now. Onions have after all been known to topple governments in the country. However, the real impact of the record procurement prices for 5 lakh tons of onions could be felt sooner than later. Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
The Income Tax Department has issued a new circular clarifying rules on the taxability of non-unit linked life insurance policies. This is following the budget announcement that the maturity proceeds of traditional policies have an aggregate premium exceeding 5 lakh rupees will become taxable. Tina Jain Kaushal, editor Money Today, spoke to Sudhin Sabne's partner Nangya Anderson about what it means for taxpayers.
Welcome, Mr. Sudhin. Please tell us what are these new rules about?
Sure, thank you. Glad to be here. So, Tina, basically, prior to the budget 2023, the payouts what were made on life insurance policies were generally tax-free. So there was an exemption specifically what was there with respect to a payout of a life insurance policy. There were certain conditions attached, but generally they were tax-free if those conditions were met. Now there has been an amendment wherein they have introduced a key rule. So the rule is basically if the premium what is paid on the policies what are taken after 1st of April 2023 as a single policy or as an aggregate of the policies what are being taken post 1st of April 2023 exceeds 5 lakhs in a financial year, then the maturity payouts for such policies will now be taxed. This is the key change what has taken place. Now this will be taxed as income from other sources to the extent the maturity proceeds exceed the premium payouts, the premium what has been paid. Now thing is there were a lot of ambiguities in the meanwhile since this change had come in, because there were a lot of clarifications required as to, for example, what happens to my existing policies, what were taken before 1st of April 2023, what happens for example to the threshold of 5 lakh, how is that to be calculated? For example, there's a GST element as well, but what goes in the premium, whether that is to be included in the calculation of 5 lakhs. When it comes to a term policy, is that also to be included in this calculation of 5 lakhs? What happens in case I've got multiple policies? So there were a lot of ambiguities what are now sort of addressed by way of this. So this circular is something which is a guideline. A lot of examples have been provided, which generally clarifies on the taxability of the payouts what will be received with respect to such policies.
If I can take one example, supposedly I have 3 policies of rupees 2 lakh each on 1st April 2023. So will all 3 be exempted, or the third one particularly where I'm actually crossing this limit of 5 lakh will be taxable?
Absolutely. So in this case, only to the extent of the third policy wherein it exceeds the limit of 5 lakhs, only that policy will be taxable. The first two will still remain tax exempt when it comes to the maturity proceeds.
Okay. So can I also decide which policy to be tax exempted to maximize my tax benefit? Is this provision available?
Yes, so this has also been clarified in the circular. So what the circular provides is that where, for instance, the policies are being taken in case of multiple policies, of course, wherein you do have payouts which will exceed the premium of which will exceed 5 lakh rupees. You can choose to the best possible extent whatever is beneficial for you, what will become taxable and what will become exempt. So that is in the hands of the policy holder, or basically of the taxpayer.
Diamonds may be forever, but that does not mean the industry's success is guaranteed as well. India's largest diamond hub, Surat, is facing the heat of the Russia-Ukraine war. With the primary source of raw materials choked off, workers in Surat are losing jobs, and some have even committed suicide, reportedly due to financial hardship. We bring you this report on the crisis.
90% of all diamonds sold globally are processed in Surat. 6,000 units in Surat cut and polish rough diamonds sourced from around the world. More than 1 million craftsmen and other workers are employed by Surat diamond industry. 1.6 trillion rupees, that is what Surat generates as revenue every year. But the sparkle at India's diamond hub has a dark side as well. As many as 9 workers have committed suicide in the past few weeks. More than 20,000 workers have lost their jobs as Surat grapples with its worst crisis till date. Diamond units have cut back on working hours, hitting the earnings of workers by as much as 30%. Staff have been sent on unpaid leaves, sometimes as long as a month.
The US-Russia war is one of the major reasons because of the sanctions of the rough from the Russian states, and अपना इंडिया तो रफ प्रोड्यूस करता नहीं एक्सेप्ट पन्ना माइंस, सो हमको अफ्रीका या रशिया से डिपेंडेंट है, so that is one. Second is global crisis similar to what we have seen. I am saying it is like a 2008, so slightly down. And third most important reason was the advent of lab-grown diamond.
Surat's diamond industry sources around 35% of its diamond supplies from Russia. That avenue is now choked due to Western sanctions on Russia. Though lab-grown diamonds with a price advantage of 15 to 20% have substituted the real stones to a large extent, softening the supply chain concerns, exports of gems and jewelry are still down. Exports in 2022 to 23 fell to 1.76 trillion rupees from 1.82 trillion a year ago. But it is the April to July export figures for this year which have set off alarm bells. Exports have plunged 29% in the first 4 months of this fiscal.
लेब ग्रोन डायमंड है, वो सेम ही प्रॉपर्टी है, सेम मटेरियल है, वो लेब में बनाया जाता है, उसमें अभी ठीक चलता है, उसके हिसाब से जो भी वर्कर है उसको काम मिल जाता है. नहीं तो वो लेब ग्रोन डायमंड नहीं आता तो लगभग हालत बहुत ख़राब होती. जो वर्कर है डायमंड इंडस्ट्री में वो उनकी हालत बहुत ख़राब हो जाती. उनके लिए कि ये लेब ग्रोन सहारा मिल गया है रोजी रोटी के लिए.
Meanwhile, the human toll of Surat crisis is mounting. There have been several suicides over the past few weeks and thousands of layoffs as diamond units adjust to the new geopolitical realities. Associations, however, deny that the suicides are due to layoffs.
जब वर्कर सुसाइड करता है तो उसका नाम रत्न कलाकार से ही सोशल मीडिया, प्रिंट मीडिया, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स मीडिया के अंदर रत्न कलाकार ने सुसाइड कर लिया। लेकिन वो हेडिंग ही सब लोग देखते हैं, लेकिन उसके पीछे का रीज़न जानने की बहुत ज़रूरत होती है। मेरा मानना है इफेक्ट है, पर लेकिन जो बात हो रही इतनी इफेक्ट डायमंड इंडस्ट्री पर अभी नहीं है।
Surat is also hoping that its brand new 6.7 million square feet diamond bourse will be the good luck charm the industry badly needs. Built at a cost of 32 billion rupees, the bourse can accommodate 67,000 people in 4,200 offices. It is also the largest office space in the world. The Surat industry is hoping that the new office will wean some business away from Mumbai BKC's Bharat Diamond Bourse, which is currently the world's largest diamond complex. With Sanjay Singh Rathore in Surat, Bureau Report, Business Today Television.
That's where we leave it on the show tonight. Thanks for watching.
What really should be your alternatives to white refined sugar, which clearly is something that you must avoid? Let's talk about what you can use instead of this white sugar. Number one, organic brown sugar. Organic, then all the very better, because this is extremely healthy. Now what it does essentially is that this is processed, but it is made in the most natural way to retain most of sugarcane's nutrition, and that's the reason why this should be an alternative. Coconut or palm sugar, again extremely healthy sources of sugar, which are alternatives as well. Extracted from the flower buds of the coconut palm tree, the sugar has a mild caramel taste and can be used in a number of ways in your delicacies, also for daily consumption. Date sugar, extremely nutritious natural sweetener. Date sugar can be a great addition to your diet. This also is a good alternative. Jaggery or gur, as we know it, has got a world of benefits in terms of what it does to your body. Essentially, a lot of people have spoken about the fact that during pollution, you should be consuming a lot of gur. It's a great alternative to sugar. Also, the fact that it is rich in iron is really an added benefit and added advantage. Raw or unprocessed honey. This too is a great alternative. You can use it in various forms, like you use white refined sugar. It tastes extremely good as well.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Just 24 hours before India scripts history. India's Vikram headed for victory. Vikram snaps stunning moon images. India prays for Chandrayaan 3. Chandrayaan's smooth sailing continues. Science and spirit in celestial dance.
In 24 hours from now and 4 minutes exactly, you will see the soft landing of Vikram on the moon tomorrow evening. And I'm going to be getting you all the updates, as you can see.
I'm standing here at what's called the ISTRAC complex. It is the mission control complex, and behind me is where Team Chandrayaan is currently seated, tracking every update that comes in on lander Vikram as he heads closer and closer to the moon. I unfortunately can't pan our cameras because this is a high security complex. We've gotten the permission to stand here, but this is pretty much all I can show you for today. More, I promise, coming up tomorrow. I'm very, very excited to also tell you that in about 15 minutes from now, we'll be joined by an astronaut, by Chris Hadfield, the first Canadian to have walked in space. He's built several space stations. He's had several firsts. He will in fact commanded the International Space Station as well. And he's going to be joining me at 6:15 p.m. to talk about India's space moment, to talk about our moon mission and much, much more. From 5:20 tomorrow evening till 6:04 is when the soft landing process will commence. From 6,000 kilometers per hour, they have to bring it down to zero, and that very steadily will have to be done. The last 4-5 minutes, the last 100 meters is when all of the sensors, the thrusters will come in and ensure that very carefully lander Vikram is brought down. And there, it'll be all about how our scientists have fared, how the design has been done. Because at that point, the scientists seated here behind me, Team Chandrayaan, will just have to keep their arms crossed and hope for the best. But let me round up for you all the updates that have come in the last 24 hours in our next report.
India's moon mission is hours away from a historic climax. Chandrayaan's Vikram lander is approaching the moon rendezvous. Saying hello to Chandrama, snapping breathtaking images from close vicinity, showing moon in all its glory, with details of the unexplored far side, complete with billionaire-old craters. Indian Space Agency asserted that the mission is fully on track. The system is undergoing regular checks to ensure a smooth touchdown.
It is almost similar to what we designed or developed for Chandrayaan 2, except for instead of orbiter now, because orbiter is anyway working fine and it is still useful and it is giving a lot of important data which will be utilized for Chandrayaan 3 landing also. So we decided that orbiter will be replaced by a propulsion module. Which duty is to take it to the orbit of moon surface.
Isro is not taking any chances, especially after crash of the Russian moon mission. Keeping another landing site ready for Sunday touchdown if parameters aren't ideal on Wednesday. Former Isro chief K. Sivan broke down the final maneuvers moments before the planned touchdown.
I want to start by asking you about the lunar mission of the Russians, which crashed very unfortunately over the weekend without being able to land successfully. You know, given what has happened with the Lunar 25, which was Russia's first attempt to land a spacecraft off the moon and that ending in failure, you know, would that increase the levels of anxiety of the team in the Space Center of Isro at this moment? Does that make you one extra level more anxious?
No, it is not so. First of all, Luna mission failure and this one, they are not related. Luna actually that is have its own system, its own the sensor, thrusters, and it may have its own characteristics. But we have our own system, our own thruster, our own sensors, which it has been functioning very nicely and without any problem. And till now we are achieved what we want in a perfect way. And I am sure that this will repeat on 23rd also. So we will get a good landing. And we are not getting disturbed by the Luna 25 failure. They are not related. They are not a similar system. They are different system. Okay. So we are confident that we'll be able to achieve without any problem.
A billion cheers, prayers and wishes are meanwhile pouring in as India roots for Chandrayaan 3.
एक बहुत बड़ा इतिहास भारत के सभी विशेषज्ञों ने, हमारे वैज्ञानिकों ने रचा है और प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में भारत नई ऊंचाइयां तो छू ही रहा था। भारत का तिरंगा केवल देश के अंदर नहीं लेकिन विश्व पटल पर अब हमारी यही कोशिश है कि वो तिरंगा चांद पे भी गाड़ के रखा जाए।
Special pujas are being held in temples and namaz is being offered in mosques, all for Chandrayaan's success. The lander is expected to touch down on Moon's south polar region at 6:04 p.m. on Wednesday. We wish India a grand success in conquering the moon. With Akshita Nandagopal in Bengaluru and Milan Sharma in Ahmedabad, Bureau Report, India Today.
And it's my absolute pleasure to be joined here on India Today by Chris Hadfield, former commander of the International Space Station and author of the Apollo murders. Just to give you a brief sense of all that Chris has achieved, he's flown in 3 missions, built 2 space stations, performed 2 spacewalks, and was the first Canadian to have walked in space. So you'd understand why I'm particularly excited about his new book, The Defector, that is in fact releasing on October 10th. That's coming out. Chris, good morning. Congratulations on your new book, and thank you very much for joining us here on India Today. I've been seeing, from your social media interactions that you've been tracking the Chandrayaan 3 moon mission very, very closely. Just so for our viewers to understand from an expert perspective, from your perspective, how hard really is a soft landing on the moon?
Well, thank you and good evening. I heard someone say 1 billion cheers for Vikram, and add my voice as one of those billion cheers. It's immensely exciting, but as you say, it's extremely hard. It's 400,000 kilometers away, and we're landing way down to the south, 70 degrees south. It's as if you were landing on the edge of Antarctica, and you're trying to do it where the final last few meters or few feet of touchdown, you're just counting on the automatic systems. And so there can always be, a boulder in the way or an uneven spot on the ground, even though they've chosen a plateau. And I know that the Russians had no success earlier this week. Remember, they've launched 27 missions to the moon, and they only landed 7 times, and the last one was a failure. So it's still exquisitely difficult. But with the tremendous experience gained in Chandrayaan 1, which helped discover water on the moon, in Chandrayaan 2, which has been mapping the moon ever since, and now with sort of the granddaughter of all of those, of Chandrayaan 3, I'm really optimistic and excited about the landing that's going to be happening just slightly under 24 hours from now.
I loved how you referred to Chandrayaan 3 as the granddaughter of these missions. It's so aptly put. I'm going to borrow that phrase also in the next 24 hours. You referred to Lunar 25, and the reason I talk about it right now, Chris, is look, Russia has attempted this, as you said, 27 times. They've got it right 7 times. Now, in the last 50 years or so, we've seen several such soft landings occur. It's 2023, and yet we haven't really been able to master it. Why is that? What makes it so unpredictable or so hard so many years on?
Well, part of it is the nature of the moon itself. If you were going around the moon, the amount of gravity that you feel in different parts of the orbit changes. The moon is a lot more lumpy than the Earth is. It's got big, dense sections. And so that makes orbital prediction more difficult. It's hard to know exactly where you are. There's no GPS. So where exactly around the moon are you? How do you even figure that out? And even though we've taken lots of images from the orbiting vehicles of the plateau that Chandrayaan 3 and Vikram are going to land on, you still don't know the fine details. You know, imagine if you were trying to land a helicopter somewhere in India and you looked and looked and looked, but then just when you got close to the surface, you had to sort of close your eyes and then just descend the last 50 meters with your eyes closed. It's sort of that level of difficulty. And that's why the engineers at Isro have been working so hard since Chandrayaan 2 to improve all of the systems, to make the landing gear wider and more robust, to try and give extra layers of backup. And it is possible to land on the moon. 3 other nations have done it. And I think India is really poised right now to be the 4th nation in history to land on the moon. The scientific impact of that and the inspirational impact of that for young Indians right across the country. But it all comes down to that last descent and touchdown coming up within a day now.
Very true. And, you know, the point that you also made about how hopefully this will come through, we've all got our fingers crossed. But also, besides what this will mean for ISRO and the kind of, you know, experiments and the moon mission that they want to complete, Chris, what does this mean really in the global space race that's underway? Where do you think it will put India in that race?
I work with several Indian companies. I help run an international technological incubator called the Creative Destruction Lab. And right now I'm working with several Indian space companies. One of them is called Dhruva Space. And I think this type of mission of showing kind of the ultimate capability of what Indian science and technology and combined capability can do, it's extremely inspiring, not just to young Indians across the country, but to young business owners and young inventors, people who are looking to do something that used to be impossible. You need to have an inspirational vision of what might be possible to then drive yourself to make the most of your own capability. And when I work with the Indian companies and see the educational capability, the insight, the brilliance of the minds, and the opportunity that's opening up now, it's really showing just how ISRO and space exploration in India is coming of age. And if you can land on the moon, I mean, you can do anything. And to me, that is the real essence of what is being attempted tomorrow.
You spoke about how this is so inspirational for every Indian youth watching right now what ISRO is accomplishing. There are a lot of cynics out there who question, Chris, what's the need for a developing nation to invest so heavily in space, to invest so heavily in space exploration? What's your answer or response to that?
Well, I think it's a really important question to ask because everything has to be done in balance. But I challenge anybody who asks that question, how much money does India spend on health and welfare and infrastructure to take care of the billion Indian people? You know, how much money is spent on that versus how much is spent on research and development and exploration? And I know for Canada, we spend an enormous amount of money on taking care of the Canadian people, but we also spend a little bit of money on inspiring and exploring and pushing the edges of technology. And I think it's important to do both. You don't want to get way out of balance. But I think it's important to truly get the exact numbers of how much is spent on taking care of the people, but also how much is spent on pushing the very edges of what we know and understand. And when I was a little boy, it was because of the moon landings that I decided what I was going to do with my life. It's why I got multiple university degrees. It's why I challenged myself to become an astronaut and to eventually command a spaceship. And I'm Canadian. I'm not from a country that used to have a space program. And so, yes, you need to take care of the people, but you also need to give your young people something that is so inspirational that they make different decisions with their lives to make the absolute most of themselves. And that balance is important, but I think what we're doing right now is a really key part of India's future.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting perspective. Chris, and I'm going to say when rather, not if, Chandrayaan 3 is a success, when that soft landing is completed, does it essentially set the stage then for a manned mission? As someone, who's gone repeatedly to outer space, does a soft landing then mean that, we're ready for that next step of a manned mission?
When the very first human being stepped onto the moon, when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, he described it as one small step, obviously, but a giant leap for all of humanity itself. But you have to make those small steps. You have to incrementally improve the technology and all of the people that build those machines. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes on the way to eventual success. And with Chandrayaan 1 and then Chandrayaan 2, we've made those small steps collectively as a group of people and push the technology a little bit too far, leading now, hopefully, to success for Chandrayaan 3. But there's a lot of numbers left after 3, 4 and 5 and 6, and it's only limited by the imagination and the collective will of the Indian people, where this will take them. There are Indians right now selected as astronauts who are training to fly into space. You can't encapsulate science and technology and inspiration more clearly than in trying to develop the capability for Indian citizens to be able to look up and see a fellow country person flying across the night sky. And that's coming fairly soon. And with what we learned from Chandrayaan 3, it will lead to eventually not just an Indian citizen flying in space, but traveling all the way to the moon and walking on the surface. There's a Canadian going to orbit the moon late next year. That seems impossible to me. And yet, because of the small steps, that's happening for my country. And because of these steps of missions like Chandrayaan 3, it's happening for India.
Steps that you've taken has ensured this moment for your country largely. So I'm hoping that there'll be many Chris Hadfields for India also very soon. Chris, I will tell you this, that, with all of this talk of Chandrayaan, of what ISRO has accomplished, it's piqued a lot of interest among Indians about space. And you've been there so many times, a former commander of the International Space Station. This is a tough ask. But can you tell me one experience that truly stands out for you? When you think about your journey in space, when you think about your experience in space, what's that one moment that always comes to mind?
Akshita, I was so lucky to spend about half a year in space. I went over India thousands and thousands of times, but I think my best moment when I was outside on my first spacewalk. We were south of Australia, sort of north of, in between Australia and Antarctica. And while I was outside on a spacewalk in the darkness, we went through the world's aurora, through the southern lights of the world. And I could see the reds and the greens, and they were pouring past our ship and flowing around me, the incredible, beautiful majesty of our planet. And it's very scientific. It's the Earth's magnetic field and the energy from the sun, but it glows in this beautiful ribbon of color. And this little kid got to go outside and experience that personally. This little dreamer from Canada, I got to surf on the world's aurora. And of all the things I've done in my life, of of all the myriad experiences, to be able to personally experience that as part of our first steps away from the world, it was profoundly moving and beautiful to see our world that way and to recognize where we are headed collectively. It's a memory that is seared into my brain, and one that I hope more and more people get to experience as our technology gets better and better.
You know, you've described that so beautifully. I half wish that instead of a journalist, I chose to be an astronaut after this conversation. But thank you very much, Chris. And as the sun sets on today, tomorrow brings a new day and history beckons India. As tomorrow evening, by this time, we'll have the great news. I'm going ahead and saying it with confidence that we'll have the great news of Vikram going ahead and making that soft landing on the moon. Let's get you all the developments that have come in so far. India is all set to script history in its space mission. All of us are on the edge. Everyone extremely excited for the landing of Chandrayaan 3. ISRO has released the latest pictures of the moon clicked by lander image camera 4. This is on August 20th. As per ISRO, the mission is on schedule. Systems are undergoing regular checks. India today, meanwhile, has accessed ISRO's Plan B. In case of any delay, another attempt of landing will be carried out on August 7th. The second landing spot is 400 kilometers from the chosen site. Our next image comes in of Allahabad University students making a sand art of Chandrayaan 3's successful landing on the moon with the caption, "Hum honge kamyab." Mariappan, an artist from Coimbatore, created a 1.5-inch miniature lander module using 4 grams of gold to celebrate Chandrayaan 3. Preparations are underway at several schools to celebrate Chandrayaan 3's successful landing on the moon. Plastic models, school halls being decorated, special songs being sung, school kids also ensuring that they're a part of the Chandrayaan fever. And prayers are pouring in from all quarters for the successful landing of Vikram. Devotees offered special namaz at the Islamic Center of India in Lucknow to seek blessings for Vikram lander. Pujas and havans are also being performed across temples in India. In Varanasi's Kamakya temple, a havan was performed by devotees. Now, I'm sure by now all of you know that yes, Chandrayaan 3 is going to be making a soft landing on the south pole of the moon. But have you ever wondered why? Why did ISRO choose this particular part of the moon? It is going to be more challenging, but there are several reasons why Chandrayaan 3 is aiming for that south pole. Let's decode that for you in our next report.
3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
The moon is just 25 kilometers below India's Chandrayaan 3. As a new chapter begins in India's moon tryst, 1 billion people are praying for its successful landing. The Vikram lander is aiming to land on the lunar south pole, which is a difficult feat. So what makes the soft landing near the lunar south pole incredibly difficult? The south pole of the moon's rugged terrain lies in the shade of perpetual darkness and plummeting temperatures. This is where researchers had previously discovered the presence of frozen water. Chandrayaan 3's successful landing will expand knowledge of frozen water on the moon, potentially one of the moon's most valuable resources. Scientists are interested in pockets of ancient water ice because they could provide a record of lunar volcanoes, materials that comets and asteroids delivered to Earth, and the origins of oceans. If water ice exists in sufficient quantities, it could be a source of drinking water for moon exploration and could help cool equipments. It could also be broken down to produce hydrogen for fuel and oxygen to breathe, supporting missions to Mars or lunar mining. Attempted landings on the moon have failed before. Russia's Lunar 25 craft had been scheduled to land on the South Pole this week, but spun out of control on approach and crashed on Sunday. The South Pole, far from the equatorial region targeted by previous missions, including the crewed Apollo landings, is full of craters and deep trenches. Chandrayaan 3 is proposed to land in the plateau between two craters, Manzinus and Boguslawski, and a third, Simpelius. Additionally, an alternate landing site has also been proposed. At the mountainous South Pole, the terrain is difficult and dangerous with major craters, minimal sunlight and temperatures below -300°F. If all goes according to plan, Chandrayaan 3 is poised to achieve a historic milestone as the world's first lunar mission to execute a soft landing near the moon's South Pole. Bureau Report, India Today.
Thanks very much for tuning in, and don't forget to join us tomorrow from 7 a.m. I'll be joining you live from right here from Isro, which is where Team Chandrayaan is currently based, getting you all the updates, live tracking of lander Vikram and much, much more. Thanks for the moment for joining us. Good night.
From the biggest conflict zones
We are at the hostile air base and this is...
to the biggest international moments, a reporter with India's flag on his sleeve and an unrelenting eye on terror, defense and national security, on the road, up the heights, in the trenches. He brings you stories that must unite us, because when it's national interest, it's India first. Monday to Friday 10 p.m. only on India Today TV. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Hello, welcome. You're watching In the Club. I'm Dipali Patel. I'm back with the best from the world of entertainment. We begin our show today with the ever-stylish Kareena Kapoor Khan, who was in the national capital. Being the new face of a home decor brand, the actress was at her candid best during a live talk show with Neha Dupia. India Today was the only channel to get the access of this fun conversation. So listen in as Kareena lets her guard down to confess the unknown side of hers as well as her family.
Do you wake up and whip it up on your own, or you have like a whole set of people who make your bed, make your coffee? Because we want to know. They said हमको सिर्फ घर की बातें जाननी है, right?
No, of course. But I'm a Virgo, so I'm a perfectionist.
Same here.
And I like to do everything on my own. Because I'm just anal about things. I like the way my pillow should be. I like the way my, comforter should be. I'm very, very anal and particular.
Now that that's out of the way, you wake up to making your bed. You're kind of, you walk out with your black coffee. You go to work. We're going to talk about work later, but we always get to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So then you come back home. So then let's talk about Sundays. Now tell us, beginning to end, what's a Sunday in the Kapoor Khan household like?
Well, Sundays, we try obviously not to work. We try, both of us, because both Saif and me are kind of working parents. So we try to at least be at home on the weekends to be with the boys. Sunday, we're always craving to be with the kids. And Temu now is of that age where he's like, but I want to be with my friends. Call my friends over, call my friends. So I'm like, oh no, he's growing up so fast. So we try to cook a meal together, do something, together. We play games, we play, his favorite game now is Uno. So now he's in that phase. We try to engage him and, kind of just, cuddle up and be together. That's the most important thing.
And then go to Mizu. And she goes to the same restaurant every Sunday for lunch. Please, we need to send her a list of...
But you guys go out more often. I think a lot of people feel that Saif and me don't go out too much. That's because we're always at work or we're traveling or something. So then when we're at home, we love cooking at home. Saif loves cooking. He's an amazing chef. So we always look up...
Oh, is that right? Please, let's backtrack. Let's hear what he cooks.
He does meats well. He does... Italian, like pastas, pizza. He makes everything. So we try to kind of, look at recipes together, choose something that we'd like to make. So we're more of like home birds. We're both very house proud because we like to entertain in our home a lot. So we call people home a lot rather than go to restaurants.
Do Saif and Kareena ever look at the price tag while buying anything?
Of course, because, we work very hard to earn our money. And both Saif and me have been working since